My name is Therese Konopelski. I will be the interviewer, and today is the 29th of October, 2018. We are located in the Julian Samora Library on the campus of the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. I will be interviewing Natalia Treviño, author of the poetry collections Lavanda La Dirty Laundry and Virgin X. She has won several awards for her writing, including the San Antonio Artist Literary Award, the Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Prize, and the Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Award. She is a professor at Northwest Vista College and has published in various journals, including the Western Humanities Review and Southwestern American Literature. Thank you, Natalia, for being here and being part of our oral history project here at the University of Notre Dame. Yeah, so happy to be here with
Mhm.
you.
Thank you so
Um,
much. It's an honor to be here and to hear your questions and share the stories so that other people can identify with a path in letters and a path in literature, and believe that they too can write and tell their stories. It's very important.
I agree. So, for the purposes of documentation, can you state your full name, date of birth, and place of living today?
Sure. My name is Natalia Ortegon Treviño. And I was born Natalia Treviño Ortegon. I switched my two last names when I became an American citizen because I was going to lose Treviño as my last name if I kept my grandfather's name
Mhm.
attached. I live in Helotes, Texas. I was born in Mexico City, and most of my family is actually from the northern region of Mexico, Monterrey.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I really enjoyed Virgin X and its portrayal of devotional culture. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up and maybe your connection to that heritage.
Okay, my childhood was binational, bicultural, and
Mm.
by that I mean that I was always going back and forth between the U.S. and Mexico as a child. We moved to the U.S. when I was 3 years old, and my parents did not think it was a permanent move. They always wanted to go back, and just told us that when we graduated from high school they would go back. And then it became when we go back, when you graduate from college, we'll go back. And as Mexico's socioeconomic problems became worse and worse, and my parents became more rooted in the US, they stopped talking about going back. There was a time when I was about 11 when my parents were thinking about moving us all back. And that was the most exciting thing I could think of when I was that age, because I felt so happy when I was in Mexico, was surrounded by family, surrounded by love, surrounded by parties. Everything gets celebrated. There's these giant gatherings. It was just a social, loving environment. Whereas in the US, we're very isolated. We lived on a little suburban street in Leon Valley, which is a little town adjacent to the city of San Antonio, and no one leaves their houses, at night or during the day. Everyone's inside. The neighbors do not talk to each other. Doors are closed. Halloween night is just it's just darkness. We're very isolated. So I had to make friends, and let my friends become my family. And of course, that's going to be hard to negotiate when you're little and you're not like them. And so my childhood was also being, out in the street with whatever friends I could find, being called wetback all the time because I was from Mexico. And recently, I recovered a memory of when I first learned what the word wetback meant. I was in my garage, which is where my family usually was on the weekends. My dad just liked to be watching the neighborhood and tinkering around with his wares in the garage, and just being outside. He just loved to be outside. So I was about to go play, and I was young enough that my mother was still bathing me and drying me off, because before I went out to play, I remembered, oh, I could tell my dad to fix this problem I'm having. And I just remember that feeling of, oh, this time I won't forget to say something. So I said, Dad, will you tell mom to dry my back off better after my shower? So I was not in charge of drying my back. I was still that young, so probably kindergarten. And he said, "What? Why?" And I said, "Well, because it's always wet." And I really believed that my back was always wet for probably months.
Right.
But I just remembered that day that I wanted to tell him because I could fix it, because I didn't know why it was a problem for my back to be wet,
Mhm.
but I knew that it was bad and that it was dirty and that it was a reason for like derision
Mhm.
among, the kids in the block. And he was horrified, and he said, why do you say that?" And I said, "Well, the kids always call me wetback." And he said, "Oh my God." And his face turned into ash and anger. And then he explained to me what that word meant.
Right.
So it's hard to be accepted into other homes when obviously families are saying things like that, because kids don't learn that word from each other. They learn
Mhm.
that from elders, right? So a bit isolated in the US and full of love in Mexico,
Mhm.
and always not really fitting into either culture, because over in Mexico, I am la gringa. I don't speak Spanish correctly. I don't have the words to play the Barbies as well as the other kids do. And in the US, of course, what are you doing? Go home. You don't belong here. Kind of thing. So it's a
Yeah.
little hard.
I think you spoke of that memory in one of your poems in Virgin X about,
Hmm.
your back always being wet. Do you remember,
Mm.
see if I can find it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It, I do tell that story, and I go into in these poems. I definitely go into histories and memories of
Mhm.
being a child, and trying to explore the importance of those moments now as an adult, now in the context of spirituality, in the
Right.
context of our social connections,
Mhm.
and to say, yeah, it's not so easy. It wasn't easy for me, but I don't think it's easy for anyone, really. And I can't remember what page that's on, so I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's
Let me
fine.
find it.
It's fine. I remember just reading it, but so I'm sorry about it.
No, that's
But
okay.
yeah, so in this bicultural childhood, when do you remember first connecting with poetry or creative writing, or when did that interest how was that interest sparked?
Mm.
Yeah.
I think I was connecting to creative writing
Mhm.
as early as first grade. When my dad had bought a house that had a hole in the garage, like in the wall,
Mhm.
and he came across a very large chalkboard, and he put the chalkboard there to cover the hole. And I think he got it from one of the offices where he worked. I don't know where he got
Mhm.
it from. And so the chalkboard became my main place to play, and it was to play, to draw, and it was at my height. So
Mhm.
it was this big. It was bigger than me,
Yeah.
and it was where I had the chalkboard in the neighborhood. So when I did have a friend over and we played school, we played this and that. And I remember learning to write first and second grade, and creating words. And I was trying to write the word to me. I was trying to be like my teachers and write these perfect letters. And I wrote to me. And I had put the words too close together. So, the teachers teach you to put a little space between the words so that you learn how to
Mhm.
write.
Right, yeah.
So I had put not enough space, and I read the word, and I read tome. And when I read the word tome, it literally just went through my body. The sound of the word was new. I had never heard that word. I didn't know that it was a real word. As I didn't know. I just remember this incredible moment of hearing the word tome as if it were a tome. I mean, a tome is just a giant body of literature. It's a
Mhm.
giant, important body of literature. And that moment was so powerful for me, and it just woke me up to language, to seeing language on the page, so to speak, a chalkboard that, it's ephemeral. You barely see it. You erase it 10 seconds later. But it also hearing it, and the sound of it just made such an impression. Like my whole body felt it and heard it. Then what I started to do, which was an unconscious habit of every word as I heard words, as I was hearing words in English, words in Spanish, I was writing them in the air to sound them out, to interact with the word. So if somebody would say the word hurt, I would be writing HER in the air, and I would the word love, and I would maybe I was learning to spell, maybe I was enjoying the word, maybe I was hearing it, but I was writing the words I was hearing from a really early age, but I didn't have paper and I didn't know I could be a writer. First time I was given the opportunity to write was in 3rd grade. The teacher gave us a little prompt, it had a little picture on it,
Mhm.
and she said, "Write a story." And I just didn't even know that I could, that you could write a story, that I could write a story. And she left me alone for hours, and because I couldn't stop writing. And I made the story, and I just kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. I ended up writing an 8-page story, which for an 8-year-old
Right,
is
yeah.
kind of a big deal. She couldn't believe it, and I didn't know I was missing all the other lessons. I was missing the math, I was missing the whatever the lessons were for the day. Because
Mhm.
they move you on, they give you 20 minutes, write a story, the kids get bored, turn it in, they go to do something else. These kids have a short attention span. I just stayed there, and then I kind of woke up from my dream right before lunch, and she was so excited and so impressed with my story, and she was showing it off to all of her colleagues and telling everyone how great it was that I had written this story. But unfortunately, she never gave it back to me,
Oh.
and she never gave it to my parents. She never gave me a grade on it, and we were living temporarily, this is in Corpus Christi, which is interesting considering what the word Corpus Christi means, the body of Christ.
Right, yeah.
This is in Corpus Christi, and we left a few months later. My dad was training, he was in computers and, was always training to new technologies, hardware, he was a hardware repairman, and so we were living in Corpus for a few months, like a semester, and when we left, she didn't send it back. I mean, she knew I was leaving, she knew I was a temporary student. I don't know, somehow not ever having read that story and knowing that good feeling it had really taught me that writing and I are together. And the next big moment was being a teenager, really into my favorite pop music, MTV. I was all turned on to the new wave music, Duran Duran, Adamant, Bow Wow Wow. I just loved all of that alternative music, and luckily was able to own an album or 2, and I started looking, studying their lyrics, the lyrics, the lyrics, and then I started to copy the lyrics down and make new poems out of their lyrics because they were words I'd never heard before. My English was stilted because of the fact that English was not in my family and used in my home, and my Spanish was stilted because of the same
Mhm.
reason. I wasn't practicing it and I wasn't living in Mexico. But so these words that these artists had, words that had nuance and flavor, I just couldn't get enough of them. So I would create poems out of their words. I guess those are called found poems in high school,
Mhm.
and would read them to my friends and pretend that they were not mine to see if they made any sense. And my friends would say, "Wow, that's really cool." And I would say, "Yeah, that's Duran Duran." Thinking because I didn't know if they made sense, but I thought, "Oh, words just unlock the world."
I
And
agree,
that's
yeah.
and that's what
Mhm.
how it happened for me. You
It's
know,
amazing, yeah. So in high school, did you write anything that accelerated your choice to pursue writing as a career?
I was, excited to get an opportunity to write in the English classes, the 1.5 opportunities I had to
Mhm.
write. I was not a diary writer or a journal writer, but so maybe I was a lazy writer. But I was always in my head writing, and definitely wrote about, I guess I did write when I had sad emotional experiences. And what I did write a lot in high school were the illegal notes that we would pass to each other, to my friends. It
Yeah.
was very, teacher, y'all did not, today everyone's texting and doing social messaging. Well, we were just literally passing notes in the hallway. And if a teacher saw you pass a note, you'd get in trouble. And if you were reading a note, you'd get in trouble. So we had this whole underground note writing group that I was in, and that's where life was really happening, was in the notes. But so it was more social, and I remember a friend saying, "Oh, Natalia, I love reading your notes because you always have great questions." And I don't know, I was just living on the page even then. And then high school, creative writing class, an opportunity came to take that my senior year, and that's when I started diving into poetry and some fiction writing, and I felt like I was touching God when I was writing my poetry and fiction when I was in that class, and my teacher was seemed to be excited about poetry, and yet she was not really excited about teaching the class. She had us grading other classes' papers all the time. So it was kind of limited there. But I was tapping into images and some fiction for which I ended up winning a little high school prize, which I thought was the pinnacle of my entire life. That I could never write a story that good again. It was called The Dollar, and it's about a girl going to Mexico and going to an amusement park and seeing the very kind of difficult ride, which had some electronics associated with it. I don't really remember what they were, being run by a child, a little 6-year-old boy, and seeing him work and work while she was a teenager. And so it was a story about an experience I had, and just really dying inside because of the fact that it was this little boy. So I created the story from his point of view, had him talking to his family and going to work. And then the day that I wrote about is the day that which is what happened. I didn't know what to do except to give money because that's, in Mexico the children are always begging and their moms are with them begging and they're asking for money. And I happened to have $1 in my purse, and so I just gave him my dollar, and I just didn't wanna see his face when I gave it to him because I didn't know if he would say, "Oh, great, what am I gonna do with this? Am I gonna go to the bank and change it, and or am I gonna be happy?" I just couldn't imagine his reaction. I just wanted him to have, like, what I had and just to say, "I wish you didn't have to work," as a child, because I lived in the US where children didn't work, but every, summer, every Christmas, I was in Mexico where the children were working. And he just was just so sweet and so intentional about his work. Like he knew what he was doing with his operation, and I was so
Yeah.
yeah.
As you look back at these early writing experiences, do you feel that you were better able to express yourself in poetry or prose?
I think probably more directly expressing myself in prose,
Mhm.
because my idea of poetry was limited by the poets I had read. So, we're reading Edgar Allan Poe and John Keats and William Wordsworth, and they're writing about flowers and they're writing about urns and they're writing about dead people. And I just didn't feel like I could follow a form at
Mhm.
all. So in poetry, I liked the idea of the condensed language and tapping something really rooted in my unconscious and seeing what could come out because it was like a flower that would be born out of a seed that I didn't even know was there. But in prose, I felt like I could create a character and really just elaborate on my sentences without that filter of that structure, which is what I felt poetry was doing. But when I started reading Pat Mora, her poetry in the book called Chants, published by Arte Publico Press, thank God my professor introduced me to that book because these poems were these tiny little gems, these tiny little diamonds, and they were about a bicultural, binational experience. They were about being a Chicana. They were about living between two worlds. So she was the first person to put words, poetic words, about something I knew, about a life that I knew, especially her poem Elena, which when I read, again, was a moment, an enormous moment for me. It was electrifying, because I was reading a poem about a woman like my mom. And to read literature, I had thought literature was way out there. It's medieval literature. It's Renaissance literature. It's so far away. It's not anything I am ever gonna really be able to create, even though I hoped to and wanted to and felt attracted to creating. I didn't know if I could. I didn't feel worthy.
Mhm.
And so, because the what was happening is that the content of that I had, that I owned, of being a woman, of being this having this bilingual mind and bicultural experience was completely shut down by the Anglo focused literature that I was reading. And so I didn't know about fields, and I didn't know about urns, and I didn't know about these worlds, moors, what are moors? I don't
Mhm.
go to Scotland. I don't know what the moors are.
Mhm.
So reading Pat Mora told me I could write about my life. And that's when I first wrote the poem Zapatos Blancos, which is the first poem in Lavando La Dirty Laundry. It's a very, very old poem.
Mhm.
It's written as an undergrad student when I was first exposed to Pat Mora because I knew that she gave me permission to write about a woman that I know deeply, my grandmother, and my grandmother Raquel, and to take something very small, a moment, and to let it unfold into something that's a poem.
Do you mind reading that poem for
Oh,
us?
I would love
Yeah.
to. Yeah, sure. I love honoring my abuelita Raquel, my abuelita Raque, who gave me just such incredible unconditional love, um, and who gave me a space to ask her hard questions, and who liked sharing with me. So, zapatos blancos. What is it about white that made my grandmother tell me, es que me siento joven con zapatos blancos? Is it the way white is clean, new, the way it looked on t shirts she washed for my grandfather, bleached crisp fresh by her young hands? Or is it the way white satin felt, draping over her princess figure, rounding over her linen smooth arms, her wedding day, summer 1932? Do white shoes remind her of the day her mother made her rub her white zapatitos until they sparkled, until each small finger reddened at the fight? Abuelita, do you feel suspended on these memories when you walk on white shoes? Is it that white came first, Abuelita, before your marriage promise, before his t shirts soiled, before an egg was cracked?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love these poems about your grandmother and that connection to your, that line of female heritage. So I was wondering, could you talk about her devotions to La Virgen de los Lagos
Mhm,
and Virgin X?
mhm.
How did her devotions affect you in your relationship to the Virgin Mary?
Well, I'm so happy to be talking about this. So her devotions, when I was witnessing her devotions, I was in my early 30s and I was going through a divorce. I actually ran away to my grandmother's house when I was needing to get a divorce from my ex-husband. And I was financially dependent on him and I didn't have anywhere to go except to visit my grandmother, who had this eternal space for me. And this is my other grandmother, my abuelita Socorro, who's my mom's mom. Who this book is dedicated to her and her lineage. Not that I don't think so much about my abuelita Raquel, who is a few times in this book, but who was more into Jesus.
Mhm.
Raquel was more into the spirit of Jesus. But my abuelita Socorro, named after the Virgin, her sister was named after the Virgin, her mother was named after the Virgin. Maria de Socorro, Maria de Alicia, Maria de Luz, and Maria de Dolores. I mean, all of them named for these different Marys. So when I was observing her devotions, I was not aware so much of how I would need them later. When she died, I was already used to living away from her. I was already used to having a life in the US and a life with her in Mexico when I would be interviewing her and asking her questions and and receiving her affirmations and really just receiving her wisdom and her love and her life experience, which she was very open with me. Since I was probably 15, did she start really sharing her life with me, her personal life. And then when I was in my 30s, I saw her devotions. I didn't I didn't take them that seriously, actually. I was curious about them, but I didn't take them that seriously. I thought they were sweet. When she died, I compartmentalized her death I didn't understand how to grieve because she was dying slowly of Parkinson's for 4 years, just became gradually frozen and, stopped having the use of her voice, stopped having the use of her legs, she stopped having the use of her arms, she could not feed herself, but she did not give up on life. She did not want to go. She really wanted to be here and with the people that she knew, and was suffering in her own way because she lost her son to leukemia, and she had her other sons and her daughter, my mom, and she just didn't want to leave us for the longest time. So when she did die, I came back to it was a very quick trip for me to go to be at her funeral, to come back and sort of pack that grief in, but it had been this slow grief over time where she was being slowly taken away from me because I couldn't interview her anymore. I couldn't ask her questions. All I could do was tell her my stories in the end of her life. And I would do that. My aunts would say, "Why are you talking? Why are you talking to her? She's not talking anymore." And I was like, "Are you crazy? She's right here. I got to talk to her and tell her my life because she was like my best friend." So when I saw this image, the image that's actually on the cover of the book, again another amazing bolt of lightning, a flash of emotion that broke me because suddenly I saw my grandmother crocheting on the bed, praying to the Virgin, and in this image she was like the Virgin. She had become like the Virgin. Her little feet, wearing the little tennis shoes, the little single twin bed, the love of crocheting was a huge part of my childhood and seeing my grandmother always working and making bedspreads and tablecloths and I mean enormous things and tiny things.
Mhm.
So I wanted to know why this image had such power over me. And that's when this process started, which was about 4 years ago when I saw this image. I mean, I might even be able to document the date because this image just came in my Facebook scroll. The
Wow.
No, really, a friend of mine named Belinda Acosta posted it, and
Mhm.
I just was looking on a Sunday afternoon because that's usually when I could spend a little bit of time on Facebook, and I saw it, and it blew me away.
Mhm.
It I hate to use that word, but that's exactly what happened. I sobbed. I couldn't understand. I was suddenly grieving my grandmother. I was
Mhm.
loving her again, grieving her, missing her, and I didn't understand why. So I decided to just read about the Virgin and access her in order to get to know my grandmother and to get to know her spirituality. And by learning more about the Virgin, I did learn more about my grandmother's spirituality. So I feel closer to her now
Mhm.
than when she was on her frozen little bed with her Parkinson's, when I
Mhm.
could talk to her and I knew she could hear me because she would occasionally have a one sentence answer. But it was so sporadic and in between that, I just didn't know. And I don't know, I just hate the thought of losing her. And that's what spirituality I think has really done for me. This entrance into it through the Virgin is allowing me to see that there are many rooms. John 14, where Jesus says, "In my Father's house there are many rooms." And what I think he means is that there's this room, the
Mhm.
room where you and I are. We can see each other, we can look at each other, we can touch each other. And there's the room, there's the rooms. This earth is a room, and then there are many other rooms. And that to me makes scientific sense. Because how could there not be more than one world?
Mhm.
Quantum physics proves it. My brother's a physicist. He explained this to me. Quantum physics proves that there are other dimensions.
Mhm.
And to know that my grandmother really is in another room, and now my father, it is really cures the loss, the grief, the loneliness that happens when you're broken apart from a loved one through death.
Yeah, I for me, Virgin X really gave me a strong impression of the many ways you can reinterpret the Virgin Mary into your spirituality, just like how there are many iterations of what it means to be Latinx.
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that connection. I was wondering if you
Okay.
could speak more about Virgin X, Latinx, and maybe this first poem that talks about your relationship to Latinx.
Yeah, I love that. So Virgin X, when I was exposed to what the letter X came from, to the history of the letter X,
Mhm,
through a workshop I did with Natalie Diaz, who's a
mhm,
wonderful poet and a wonderful teacher. She had us looking at the origin of some letters, looking at this book called The Mysteries of the Alphabet. And I was attracted to the letter X and the history of it. And when I found out that its history is that it actually was a symbol of an ancient ladder or a fishbone, a cross, basically, I became really intrigued by what that means because it was connected once to a force of life and is also an object that we need in order to build. I mean, it's just incredible that the X comes from these two ancient tools, right? The
mhm,
fish that we eat, and we're left with the fish and the vertebra and the ribs, and also this ladder. So when I meditated on that, on the meaning of the X, and thought about how the X is so many things now. It is what X's something out, right? It
mhm,
does symbolize erasure. It's also X marks the spot. It symbolizes the treasure, where the treasure is. It is the 2 points that converge, right? That cross over, where you have a moment of energy, a spark in that cross, in that crossing. It is also the absence of an answer in mathematical equations. X equals ting, right? X
mhm,
equals this, X equals that. It's how we learn algebra. The X is also what we send when we form a kiss, right? And I regret that that's not in the poem yet, but I want to revise the poem and get the X as the symbol of kiss as well. Where two lips meet, it forms an X. How does it relate to Latinx? Latinx is a wonderful concept that says, I embrace all of me, not just the A of me or the O of me, the gender of me, but I am the human being of me. So X is also the multiplication of all of these identities. It is a question or a blank, but it's also an answer. So to think about Latinx in this broader sense, making it even more inclusive. And I do not want to in any way erase what's happened with Latinx and how it's needed for someone who is non-gender conforming,
mhm,
non-binary conforming. That's a very important identity that needs to be captured through Latinx. But Latinx is also someone who doesn't necessarily want to identify only as their gender, as in terms of their being human. So the Virgin X is an echo, an honoring of that, saying, you know what, the Virgin also has many identities.
mhm,
She is the Virgin of the gold medal that you
mhm,
have that you're wearing. She's the Virgin of Guadalupe that I'm wearing. She's the Virgin of San Juan de los Lagos. She's the Virgin of so many names. I have Mary, Mother of the Word, where I try to identify just some of her names. She has over 20,000 names in the world. And here I don't know, I haven't counted how many are in this poem, maybe 30 or so. And I cut a lot out because it just
mhm.
read like a litany, but I wanted to find the music in her name and
Right.
her many, many names. And I wanted to give her all of those identities to show that X is all the virgins that are out there now
Mhm,
and virgins that are to come, because a virgin, what I found is this common strand in a lot of the stories is that when she performs a miracle, the community that witnessed the miracle would name her after that location. So
right.
Loretto is a place, Guadalupe is a place, Notre Dame is well, Our Lady of the Lake is a place.
Mm,
I love this one, Our Virgin of the Rocks of the Pillar. That's a very specific miracle. The Virgin of the 33 who freed Uruguay. That's a very specific moment in history where the 33 men who prayed to her on the night before their battle when they were not destined to win. They prayed to her, and because they won, they feel that she appeared to them and that she is the reason that they won. And they have the Virgin of the 33 who freed Uruguay. And that's her whole name. And I wanted to honor that. She's also a great lady, Tonantzin. So many names. And then the end of that poem, I connect her to where I saw there were millions and billions of identities and X's in the very ovum that any girl, in the very specific ovum
Mhm.
that every single girl is born with, the thousands and thousands of eggs that are inside of her, that all of these possibilities, all of these identities inside of her. Because I feel like that is, and the the essence of who the Virgin is and can be. I she's multiplied in these tiny little eggs all over that are unborn yet and that have been born already.
Yeah, I thought this poem especially had such great rhythm. The
Oh,
litany, it just has that kind of it can bring on this trance like state, this meditation. I always love that
oh,
aspect about it. So I was wondering if you could read it for us, we could hear
oh,
that beautiful.
I would
Yeah,
love to read it.
yeah.
Mary, Mother of the Word, Mary, Mother of Sorrows, Mary, Mother of Mercy, Queen of Heaven, Guadalupe, Cause of our joy, Our Lady of Peace, Our Lady of the Lake, Notre Dame, of Lebanon, Loreto, Lourdes, Nazar, of the miraculous medal fashioned at her request, Our Lady canonized and crowned, of perpetual help, of solitude, of snows, of confidence, Our Lady of Fatima, Lucia's Lady, who made the sun dance, Our Lady of Charity, Gate of Dawn, Immaculate Conception, Grace, Good Counsel, Good Help, and Good Health, of the rocks of the pillar of the 33 who freed Uruguay, Our Lady, Great Lady, Donancin, Queen of Mexico, Virgen de San Juan del Valle en Texas, de los Lagos en Mexico, Virgen Morena, naming your appearances, too many, over 20,000 names I heard, beyond counting. You are non-count noun, salt, not granules, diluted, miracles in el mar, los mares, de Maria, both the cure to the living wound. Morning star, the nexus of your names self pollinates, mystical rose, refuge of sinners, like dandelion seeds swaddled in balmy currents, how they land with feathery precision of giving life giving spring, Our Lady of Aparecida, Nuestra Señora de la Asunción. They contain the whole and the fraction of you, Virgen of Suyapa de Honduras, the factors, the multiples of you, across the nations, you, divided by millions, multiplied by the unnamed, by those caught in the mystery of stamen, in the mantle of semen, pistils and anthers, those ova who wait in white ladles, ovum, Ave Maria.
So I know you said when you were reading a lot of lyrical poetry like Wordsworth, Keats, you said you didn't really want to be restricted so much by form, but you do play a lot with, I think, rhythm here, and then in general in Virgin X, should we say shape on the page?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, how you feel about form in general and how you write,
Mm.
and how you structure it when you
Sing
compose, yeah.
yeah, I'd love to talk about
Mhm.
that. Well, as I said, you were asking earlier about how which one where you could express yourself more, and
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
form, originally I thought would limit me,
Mhm.
um, but then when I read Pat Mora, I realized that form can also expand the poem
Mhm.
and make it, um, a a higher work of art. So I became very interested in how stanzas work and how sound works, especially being a student of literature,
Mhm.
writing essays and essays about
Mhm.
stanzaic, powers and iambs and all the sounds
Mhm.
that poets manipulate in order to create an effect. So I now like to use form, but I also like to be inventive about it. And so my poetry is definitely free verse, but I do want there to be music and movement in it, and I do pay attention to rhythm. I need to pay attention to rhythm. And when I get the rhythm wrong, it just creates a really nasty kind of bong in my head that I don't enjoy. So now, when I first thought about writing, I knew that this pencil drawing was going to allow me to write poetry again, or the only way I could capture the amount of emotion I felt every time I saw this image
Mhm.
was going to be through writing a poem, because poems do allow me to get that real deep emotion to come out in a way that may not necessarily make literal sense, but non literal sense, so that it feels authentic. I thought, what's the highest form of poetry that I could write for the Virgin? What is this? What can I do? And I thought, oh, I'll write sonnets. I'll write a series of sonnets to her various names. And what a wonderful thing! What a wonderful way to learn about her and to honor her. And then I realized, wait, a sonnet, it's a male form.
Very
It
much
is
so.
it is a male form. It is created by men. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful, beautiful form.
Mhm.
But I almost felt like she told me, I don't want to be in sonnets. I want to be in wings. And so I started to write the poems to her in the shape of the wings that I imagine that she's wearing in her with her beautiful drapery, and especially La Virgen de San Juan de los Lagos, who looks like a rocket ship, who has these two wings on the either side of her. In my the way I see her. So she because I saw the wings as being essential and important part of her couture, part of her clothing, and the way we dress her, and because I wanted to honor that feminine shape, I started to change the form and go into literally creating wings on the page. Then that became also too static and predictable,
Right.
and I thought, that's it's too artificial. It needs to be a little bit more natural. And so I shifted, especially in the long segment, Queen of Heaven and Earth, where the lines are all over the page, but kind of jagged and
Right,
hopefully
yeah.
fluid, creating the element of wings. Like there's a little soft one there, and then it comes out again. So even though the lines are long, I did try to create this sense of her fabric. Whether that
Right.
works or not, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I definitely needed that to be my way of honoring her, because that honors the way other artisans have dressed her.
Mhm.
And I feel like these poems are not only addressing her, but are part of the beautiful couture is that she emblemizes, that she is a part of it, because
Mhm.
as I've studied lots and lots and lots of images of her, the the way we humans dress her, it just fascinates me. The way we dress the Queen of Heaven, the way we dress the Mother of God. We give her our greatest clothing, right? Our greatest paint color, the lapis lazuli, the most expensive paint color there is,
Mhm.
right? The gold. The layering when we discovered, and I say we, which I didn't write, but when the painters discovered luminescent paint and translucent, it could create translucent uh, filigree like lace and just see through fabric in a painting. That was a new technique they discovered, and they're like, oh well, let's put it on the Virgin. Let's make it part of her mantle. Let's make it part of her halo. Let's make it part of the drapery on her hair, to give her like the greatest look that we have, right? The greatest fashion that we can achieve. We give
Mhm.
it to her. And so I needed to fashion poems that tried to do that too, with shape and texture. So that's why there are different shapes in the book. There's some couplets, and there's the prose poem, and then there's the mix of prose
Mhm.
and couplets in Latinx as well. Even though
Mhm.
that poem is not directly about her,
Mhm.
it's about the significance of X, which is about survival.
So did you, use couplets mostly because they allow you to play more with shape, I think just linearly, or was there something else to that?
There's there's that, but there's also spacing in the sound,
Mhm,
and because the images are there's a lot in them, there's a lot of language in them to give you a chance to see the images, because I think sometimes when you crush them together in a bigger stanza,
mhm.
they're they're not as vivid on the page, and I guess I like for them to be seen because there's a lot of work that goes into them, rearranging, rearranging sound, rearranging word, deepening my vocabulary. I think for a reader they give you a little rest so you could kind of take them in as you want to. Um,
Yeah, definitely, yeah, and about, decorating the Virgin with the most expensive materials, the dome here is just it has that, gold leaf all over it, really expensive, they have to replace it, every few years or so,
oh
you know?
wow,
And so, you
yeah,
actually talk about visiting this campus in,
hmm
transit stations of the
hmm
Santa Maria Novella. I was
hmm
wondering if you could read just that specific section because I enjoyed it.
oh, I'm
That
so
can I enjoy that
glad.
as a reader, I connected to it because I've been here for 3 years now,
Well,
so yeah,
yeah, and
mhm,
it's my I love I mean,
yeah,
coming to this visit
mhm.
page you're
I think
reading.
it's 8.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yes,
Okay,
mhm,
I was looking later in the book.
yeah,
Transit stations of the Santa Maria Novella. When I started writing about the Virgin,
mhm,
I didn't know that it was gonna lead to travel. It was only to meditate on my grandmother and her faith and to
mhm,
get to know my grandmother. But and I was at it was a time in my life when I was feeling sorry for myself about travel because I love to travel ever since I think because I was always traveling as a kid to Mexico and fascinated by everything I saw and the
mhm,
way there and the way back, especially they were always road trips. So I love road trips. I love car trips, bus trips. I was feeling sorry for myself because my husband, who's Australian, he has to use all his travel to go to Australia to see his family. And for us to go together is not possible all the time, or it's very rare that we can both go. It's so expensive, and he needs to go for a great length of time to see his family, which I we knew that would be the case when he moved here. So I realized that, oh, my dream of of taking vacations with my partner were kind of not going to happen. So right around that time, and I was letting go of that thinking, I guess I'm gonna have to, when I travel, I gotta go by myself. Well, right when I was making that decision and or realizing that, I got invited on road trips. I got invited to take a trip from San Antonio to Chicago with a friend of mine, Macarena Hernandez, to take Sandra Cisneros' car to Chicago and drop it off for her brother. And so I thought, "Oh, I'll get to see the middle of the country. I've never seen the middle of the country before. Well, since I was a child, we used to drive to Minneapolis whenever my dad had training, but I was really little when we were doing those trips. So I wanted to see more of America. And then that happened that summer, the same summer, a friend of mine invited me to travel from Canada, where she had been living in Newfoundland for a year, to Omaha, Nebraska. And I thought, I would love to take that trip. And she was like, "Are you sure it's gonna be, hard and we don't have any time to see anything, but we're" I said, "Just to be with you would be great
mhm.
for 3 or 4 days," or I think it was a 5-day trip. But I also wanna see. I'm willing just to see Canada. I'm willing just to see the US, especially that part of the US, which I'd never seen before, which was the Northeast and going all the way through to Omaha, through passing through South Bend.
Yeah,
So that's how that happened, and it's almost as if and then there were 2 giant miracles that happened on that trip. One was our stay in Montreal,
mhm,
which we found out just as we were pulling up to Montreal, that the city of Montreal was named for the Virgin originally, literally was named after her. And 2, there's a giant basilica Notre Dame in Montreal, which is world famous, one of the biggest and most important in the world. And I thought, "Oh, we're probably not gonna get to see it because we don't have any time, and I can't be dragging my friend from one church to the other." I'd never even been inside a basilica before. Sure enough, as we circled to find our hotel and we couldn't find it and we couldn't find it and we couldn't find it, we discovered that her hotel was next door to the basilica. Next door. I mean, it was incredible. Like the luck, because we weren't going to have time to visit. Of course, now I got to see the Virgin's couture, the
Mhm.
full like the giant, enormous devotion to her. Then, second miracle on that trip was, I guess it's in the poem. I should just read,
Yeah.
right? I should
Yeah,
just read.
definitely.
So let me go. I'll start at the beginning and read until we get there.
Okay.
Okay. So, and the Santa Maria Novella is a church in Florence, which tells the story novella of the Virgin Mary. And it's got incredible chapel dedicated to her life story, painted by Ghirlandaio, who was Michelangelo's teacher. And Michelangelo probably painted in there too when he was learning, practicing the bright colors. We met in a taxi when I was a child visiting Mexico. You, an ornament in the rearview mirror, strung, swaying, then stamped to a silent glass candle. Your face ensconced in relief on gold pendants draped over the hearts of women. In white plaster, your silhouette against my Juanita's wallpaper. Unlike any mother I knew, you were a girl. Point of your nose and curve of your lip matched those on my ceramic dolls, fragile faces shelved out of my reach. I imagined your hands in prayer under your thick robes, your eyes looking low, seeing the dirt under my feet. I cannot name the intersections you've created between us here, what route led me to this hot train station in Firenze near this striped marble basilica in your name? What accident or plan took me a year before, when all those letters to you began, to land for a night in old Montreal, a city named for you, we discovered, Ville Marie, at the only dog-friendly hotel my friend Jen could find, planted, we discovered, when circling and lost by a great gyre I'm sorry, by a great chance or gyre on the same block as Basilique Notre Dame. Inside, I could hardly lift my eyes to the blue gold vaulted ocean of you, to the intricate shimmering devotions to you, my tearful miraculous first meeting with you. And 3 days later, same road trip, I can barely stand to tell you this or pray it, because who believes in miracles now? Who? But Jen chose, and we were not deliberately on a Holy Mary pilgrimage in the Americas tour. But Jen chose, she told me this after, Jen chose South Bend, Indiana for a one-night stop on our 20-hour road trip from Philadelphia to her house in Omaha. Picked it by finding the midpoint with her finger on a map before we knew she'd give me this free ride from Quebec because I asked her if I could see America with her on her way home, see the heartland and such, not 30 miles outside of South Bend. After singing for hours, New York with Alicia Keys, after driving the blur of a hangover, maybe, that was all of Pennsylvania, after the rolling green miles sandwiching the dozens of mini mall rest stops, after hugging the lip, or was it the tongue of Lake Erie, after traveling through endless ethanol crop, deceptive sea of emeralds, wild lipped cornstalks in this clearly unparched country, this saturated symmetrical gem of a garden, this blinding created single-hued horizon. These, for thee I sing to you, hills. This, for thee I cry, I cry, I cry for you, America, for your hidden people, shoved through your eyeless mill, your people not visible under God, your people packing the meat, building the houses, eating walls of sand. All of this land I'd hungered to see, so beautiful, the leaves waving, but a living grave, not a fruited plain. As we grieved, Jen said, I think Notre Dame is in South Bend. Or maybe, her face spooked. I do a frantic this is not possible search on my phone, and Google confirms. Notre Dame is there, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart here, at the midpoint of our journey, our dog friendly hotel once more directly across from a 1 minute drive from another basilica. Miracle.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing that story, that personal encounter with Notre Dame, and I feel like I had a similar experience when I visited here the first time.
You did?
But yeah.
Oh, I want to hear about it. I want to hear
Yeah, I
about it.
mean, it was just at the grotto and looking at the basilica, I just felt that I was meant to be here. Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's
It
such a
really
special.
is.
And you know what? One of the things that I want to echo about how
Yeah.
special it
Mhm,
is that the it, the people uniting there
mhm,
makes it special. It is a grotto. It is a replica, right, of
mhm,
the grotto at Lourdes, but it is the people who built it to make it that special.
mhm.
I think about those artisans a lot when I look at the work with the Virgin. I think about the artisans behind the craft, the ones who cut out the little stars on her dress, the ones who sew her dresses and dress her up in San Juan de los Lagos, the ones who carve the stones, because they're doing what I'm doing, which is making a place to look at the Virgin.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe second last question, how did you decide to organize or the general poem within that the poem you just read was in, Coatlicue, Queen of Heaven and Earth?
Mm. How did I decide to organize that poem
Yes,
within that series?
yes. Or I
Within it?
guess why did you choose to make this a series?
Yeah. So one of the most fascinating things about the Virgin
Mhm,
for Mexicans especially is how the Virgin really helped unite Mexico, and it happened through the story of the Virgin, the Virgen de Guadalupe. But she united Mexico because of what she did for the indigenous people. When she appeared to Juan Diego on that hill in Tepeyac and created roses out of snow and put her own image on his mantle, on his clothing, she spoke to the indigenous people. That's where the big uniting came, because the indigenous people were obviously being oppressed and were worshiping different deities and different gods. And when they saw her and what she echoed in their own goddess Tonantzin, Coatlicue, they accepted the Virgin as their goddess. So in there, I think meaning is made in the mind of the viewer. And when she meant that to them, Coatlicue and the Virgin Mary combined into a single entity. And I think the Virgin became a part of a larger tradition of female divinity than what was happening even before her presence in Judeo-Christian life. So now we're tracking her back to earlier centuries. Coatlicue being the creator goddess, the mother of the stars, the mother of the moon, the mother of the sun. Coatlicue is she's the life force that's connected to the earth and also the protector of mothers. So I really wanted to find, this is why it's called transit stations. I really wanted to find where my meetings with Coatlicue are, with this great mother goddess that is the mother of God. If Mary is the mother of God, then she's the mother of God, and she's always been the mother of God, even before she was born as a human being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
I
does.
mean, it's really an enormous concept
Mhm.
to tackle, but only a poem can do it. I think because you have to make these leaps, and these leaps of language, leaps of understanding. So I had to start in with my story, and I am in transit. I am in a car. I am in a taxi. I am in a car. I am on a road trip. This trip is larger than the trip itself. It's the journey of life, and not just a mortal life, but a spiritual life that is eternal. That I am. uh, connected to, and I think that we're all connected to. The idea that our souls precede us is something that is espoused by people in different religions, and that our souls might even be coming back again. That exists in a lot of religions, and I like to see the parallels because it's aggregate data.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's data that's collected through aggregate means. It's like, what are the similarities in these religions? Because I feel like that's where
Mhm.
a truer sense of the other dimensions might lie.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're out of time, but thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here. I love talking to this conversation.
Oh,
And a big thank you also to the Institute of Latino Studies
I
and
am.
Letras Latinas. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's
Yeah.
just
All
been
right.
wonderful, wonderful, Trey. Yeah.